And you have a right to criticize any other faith also. People should have tolerance to criticism, and we should be able to live peacefully and with a spirit of coexistence. And that is what is required at this moment, and that is what is highlighted at this moment, because any amount of intolerant acts should not scare us. 2 years after the fatwa asking to kill Salman Rushdie, the translator of this book in Japanese language was killed, just killed. And the Italian translator was stabbed. 2 years later, 37 people were killed in a hotel, and it was targeting the Turkish translator. Before the first copy reaching India, India became the first country in the world to ban this book. Nobody has read the book at that time. So this is the story basically. And where is Allah? Where is Muhammad? Where is Islamic faith? Where is critique of Islam? Where is blasphemy?
Hello everyone, and welcome to this meeting with Sanal Edamaruku. I'm Shubhi Sinha, heading the youth wing of Rationalist International. We are happy to welcome all of you who have been connecting with us through Zoom, through Clubhouse, through YouTube for a very long time now. And we are happy to come back this week with the topic of Salman Rushdie and the Satanic verses. I would also like to add on that we will now be updating weekly about the meetings in our Rationalist International website, which is www.rationalists.net. I would repeat it again, www.rationalists.net. So please note that keep your audios mute when Mr. Sanal Edamaruku is speaking, so that there is no disturbance in the recording issues. And the pattern for the meeting would be as regular, where Sanal Edamaruku would be speaking for an hour, and then we will limit the questions to 30 minutes or maybe a bit more. So now, coming to the topic, Salman Rushdie and the Satanic verses. Salman Rushdie said he felt his life was relatively normal in an interview conducted just 2 weeks before he was stabbed on stage in the US. The award-winning writer is in a critical condition after being attacked at an event on Friday. He has faced years of death threats for his novel, The Satanic Verses, which some Muslims see as blasphemous. There has been an outpouring of support, with the attack condemned as an assault on freedom of expression. The attack was met with shock and outrage from the much of the world, along with tributes and praise for the award-winning author, who for more than 30 years has faced death threats for the Satanic verses. Fortunately, he's off ventilator and is able to talk. He had arrived for the interview with no security at all and appeared relaxed, as he said that Iranian fatwa was decades old. But it's so unfortunate that an incident like this happened. To discuss further on this topic and to know more about what really happened, I would like to call Mr. Sanal Edamaruku with us. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Shubhi. Thank you, everyone. As you all know, this conversation is going parallelly, simultaneously on 3 different websites, and people can witness it, view it actually on rationalist.net and sanalidamarugu.com and a Malayalam website, namely therali.org. So this is something quite unique, and a lot of people who cannot reach Clubhouse from different countries can also really participate in this meeting and see everything when it is happening as it is going live. So now we are ready and we are on to it. Thank you very much. The news that reached all around the world on US time around 8:30 day before yesterday has been shocking. those who know about Salman Rushdie, or those who have been following what he has been doing, were a bit relieved in the last few months when he officially wrote in an interview that he didn't anymore feel the impact of the fatwa that came some 30 years back, 3 decades back. For the last 20 years, he was living in the United States, and he has been even traveling on the metro. People started forgetting the death threats. Most of the people who probably felt outraged against him hearing what was told by the Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini of Iran started understanding what was it and what this order was all about. He was in Britain when the fatwa came, back in 1988. As you all know, Satanic Verses was the 4th novel written by the Indian-born author Salman Rushdie. He was studying in Britain. He was educated in Britain, and he was an Indian English author living in Britain. And his first novel, The Midnight's Children, that's about India. India got independence on a midnight. From there it begins. And this novel got the Booker Prize. Rushdie was on the international scene from the first novel onwards. He wrote in a very beautiful, subtle language. He communicated to a higher level of literary audience. And he was respected all around the world as one of the finest writers of our times. Satanic Verses was his 4th novel. And the novel was published in London in 1988. Some articles came immediately, accusing that the whole novel is about Muhammad, the prophet of Muslims. They accused that he was insulting the Islamic faith. There were demonstrations in Pakistan and in India and in some parts of London against him, asking for the ban of the book. Before the first copy reaching India, India became the first country in the world to ban this book. Nobody has read the book at that time, because the first copy was not even at any of India's port. It was just on transit, but the book was banned. India became the most intolerant country of the sorts in matter of freedom of expression by becoming the first country to ban this book even before Pakistan would do it. Well, Pakistan followed India and banned the book. Eventually, this was banned in other Muslim countries. And I think in South Africa also this was banned. But after some time, there were meetings, demonstrations in different places, and copies were burned publicly by protesters. That was in January 1989, I think. In Bradford in UK, there was a demonstration and many copies were brought and publicly burned. By February, the American Cultural Center in Islamabad, in Pakistan, was attacked. And 5 people were killed. And why American Cultural Center should be attacked? For a British author publishing a book in Britain. Well, that's how the fundamentalist politics would go. But the next day, the very next day after this attack on the American Cultural Center in Islamabad, on February 14, 1989, the supreme religious leader of Iran, Ayatollah Khomeini issues a fatwa. You know, I hope you all know what is fatwa is. Fatwa is a religious decree given by a high religious authority. So the fatwa is Salman Rushdie should be killed. Imagine a head of the nation, a religious leader, the supreme leader of Iran, officially asking to kill Salman Rushdie for writing this novel. And he also announced a huge bounty if anyone would kill him. The extreme form of religious intolerance against somebody writing a novel was very well seen with this statement. And well, Salman Rushdie was given protection by the British government. They have kept him in a very safe place. And the British Secret Service has made a big protection against him. And he was taken very seriously. And this threat was also taken seriously. And he was under the protection of the British government for a long time. But sitting in the difficult situation when he could not come out, he could not go to a public stage where he could not appear on a press interview as others would do, Salman Rushdie made public statements denouncing the fatwa, asking for tolerance, demanding freedom of expression. But also he said, come on, read this book. This is nothing to do with Muhammad or Islam or Allah. This is altogether something different. I'll come to that. You know, most of the people have not read the Satanic verses, but fortunately, I could read it even at that time. One of my friends, many of you must be knowing the person, Barbara Smoker, the former president of the free thought movement in Britain, when she visited India, she brought me a copy with a fake cover. I got a copy in India. Well, interestingly, when I was traveling on an aeroplane, one of my friends who was a cabinet minister, I found, was reading a copy of Satanic verses in the flight. Well, of course, the book was banned and there was big fight going on against the book. It was officially banned in India, but a cabinet minister, I saw him, I don't want to name him. He was reading the book in the aeroplane, in the first class area. And I was sitting near him and he asked me if I have read it. Yes, I said, I have a copy. He said, most of us have read it. Copies are available. There is nothing against Islam in it. Even if it's against Islam, why should they make a lot of noise like this? There are so many publications about Islam and against the faith of Islam, starting from the medieval times. St. Thomas Aquinas has written against Islam. Lot of other religious leaders have written against the faith of Islam. Martin Luther has written against that. I mean, a lot of people have written about that. And anybody has the right to think and write about any other faith and criticize any faith. There is nothing wrong in that. But where is the idea coming that if you speak against or about somebody's faith, they should be killed? That's the highest level of intolerance that we know, and which is officially sanctioned by the supreme leader of the Shia faith. Well, it did not end there. By 1991, we see the next development. The book was translated in all different languages. Different languages it was published. Well, as you know, I'm a publisher in India. And my publishing house wanted to publish a translation of this in India, but I cannot officially publish it. So what we did was, we took a German appreciation of this book, which tells exactly what was in this book, and critically evaluate this book, and we published in Malayalam almost the same time. The people knew it. So it was a study on Satanic verses and Salman Rushdie. and published in Malayalam language by the Indian atheist publishers, which I am presiding over. That we could do. Why we did that? Because something like 6 years before Satanic Verses was published, there was another book in India. Perhaps the first book in modern times that came into circulation, criticizing the fundamental faith of Islam. That was again coming from Indian atheist publishers and was written by my father, J. Edamaruku. Quran, a Critical Study. That was in Malayalam language. That was his mother tongue. He was a very famous writer in that language. But he has also written about Bhagavad Gita and about the Christian faith. And this was the third book in the series about the Islamic faith. A critical evaluation of Quran. But there was no hate language in that. But verse by verse, it was quoting Quran. And it spoke about the absurdities in the fundamental faith of Islam. There were some demonstrations against him, but he made a public statement. Well, if you cannot answer the questions that I've raised in this book, you could make all these demonstrations, you can ask for a ban of this. But if you think you can address these questions that I've raised, why don't you, I challenge you, why don't you go and publish a reply to the allegations or arguments that I raised? If you cannot do that, well, you can make all these sounds. Well, he was taking a lot of precaution at that time. I was the publisher. The day it was going to the printing press, we had a long drive. And at New Delhi, there is a road named Satanic Marg. That's a road from the Delhi gate, starting from the Delhi gate. We stopped the car. He held my hand and told that, do you know what is this road? What is the name of this road? Satanic Marg. And who was Satanic? So then he told me that story. Satanic was an Arya Samaj monk, a campaigner. Arya Samaj was a reformist movement in India. And back in early 1990s, he wrote a book critically evaluating Quran. Before the first copy coming out, somebody has leaked this information with a proof copy, and it became a huge public issue at that time. And a fanatic has shot Satanic dead. He was a freedom fighter. When the Guwahati Congress of the International Congress, which was leading the Indian independence struggle, Gandhi, whom we call Mahatma Gandhi, presented the resolution expressing his shock and sadness on the assassination of Satanic. There was a resolution passed in support of his right. But Satanic was killed for writing this book. So my father was holding my hand there and said that this is a road in his memory. Why I introduce this road to you? Tomorrow this book is going to the printing press and some days it will be published. If anything happens to me, it can happen. If it happens, what I should do, how I should proceed with things, and he has handed me over a copy of his will that he has written, and he was willing to face any kind of consequence for writing that book. He thought somebody has to come out to break the ice and write a book about Quran. That was in 1982, 6 years before Satanic Verses was published. But the way he handled it, and nobody would consider him a religious hater or anything. He was an atheist, very clear atheist, but he had criticized the religion that he came from, Christianity first, then Hinduism, then Islam. He didn't, stop his critical evaluation of any faith. He died peacefully in 2006 later. Nothing happened to him. But while the whole episode was going on about Salman Rushdie and India becoming the first country to ban it, we have been very careful. Also, we have been very active raising public support for Salman Rushdie in India. I've been in contact with him. I met him also. The publication of a critical evaluation of his book in India, while the book officially is banned, was also a step of a solid declaration of support of the idea of free expression. Well, the consequences were well known. We took enough precautions, but sometimes even precautions would not work, we know. I mean, as it is well known that, I mean, fanatics cannot be stopped anywhere. Now, coming to the history of the book that made all this controversy. 1991, 2 years after the fatwa asking to kill Salman Rushdie, the translator of this book in Japanese language was killed, just killed. And the Italian translator was stabbed. 2 years later, 37 people were killed in a hotel, and it was targeting the Turkish translator. The Turkish translator was staying in a hotel, and that hotel was bombed. 37 people died. And he did not die, but I mean, 37 people lost their life because the intolerant people wanted to execute anybody associated with Salman Rushdie. So by 1998, there was huge public outcry against a nation officially announcing a bounty for killing somebody for writing a book. So the Ayatollah Khomeini has passed away, and the new government said in 1998 that Iranian government does not want to carry out this fatwa. They did not anymore endorse this fatwa. That was a sign of a bit change. Khomeini's successor, Ali Khamenei, that was the successor of Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. He said another statement: it would be authorized by Islam. If anybody kills, that is authorized by Islam. That was the new statement. In 2005, practically the fatwa come into being again. The new religious leader and announces that it's according to Islam to kill the blasphemer. And 2007, British government responded to all these threats. And of course, Rushdie is a very respected writer, and British government given officially a knighthood to Salman Rushdie, became Sir Salman Rushdie. The knighthood was officially knighted by the Queen of the monarch of Britain in 2007. That is a clear position where the British government is standing. That was a very, very powerful position. And if you remember, one of the first international political leaders who came out condemning the attack and standing with Salman Rushdie was Boris Johnson, the present Prime Minister of Britain. Immediately, or just before that, came Emmanuel Macron, the President of France, the most respected leader of the secular France. He is respected all around Europe for his very stern stand for secularism and very affirmative position to fight Islamic terrorism. They all stood for him. But in 2016, things don't end. 2016, another bounty was announced. For anybody killing Salman Rushdie, they would get $2.8 million they would get. That was an announcement coming again from Iran. And now where is Salman Rushdie during this time? He has been in Britain all these years, but 20 years back, he moved to United States. He has a dual citizenship. He's a British citizen as well as an American citizen. So he went to United States and he started living there for the last 2 decades. He was living in United States, in New York. His address was known only to very, very close personal friends. But Rushdie wanted to come out. He wanted to talk to people. He wanted to interact with people. I'll tell you another story. When the fatwa was still very actively on, when there were all these killings and assassinations and stabbings were happening, Rushdie decided to come to India because he had to settle a property issue in Simla. Would that be safe? Government of India, the then government of India, protected him. And he could come to India 2 times. He went to Simla, and it was known only for very, very few close people. After he left only, it was announced that he was in India. He could come to India where the book was first banned. And in New York, Rushdie started thinking that, well, the bounty is there, but I mean, people started forgetting about the whole thing. And there is no Islamic terrorism as that he would see, I mean, running around him. He decided to travel on the metro. Many times he has been traveling on the metro, and he almost started thinking that it's all past and he's now leading a life wherein he can live with other people, getting merged into the crowd and I mean, living normally. On this day, when he was attacked, in that literary event, there was no security. There was no frisking of people. There was no metal detector. It was planned in a way that Rushdie and the audience, a highly literary appreciating audience, should feel it all comfortable without any protection, without any kind of metal detectors, any kind of police brisking people. So it was all free. So the killer or the person who intended to kill Rushdie could come in with his knife without any checking. That was a mistake. That was seriously a mistake. So now, when the first reports came, it was not very sure what was happening, but there was some medical person in the audience. He could give an immediate first aid, which saved him practically. There were stabs on his left eye, stabs on his neck, on his stomach, on his leg, and there are punctures in different parts of his body. It's not very sure whether he would lose one of his eyes. There is a stabbing on his liver. But today, some minutes back before this meeting began, there were reports coming that he is on way to recovery and the ventilator is off anyway, and he could talk to people, and he smiled and talked to people, talked to friends, that he would want to live more, to write more. That is Salman Rushdie in its true form. So Rushdie is in Pennsylvania hospital. He was airlifted immediately after this incident, and he is now treated carefully. It may take quite some weeks and months for him to recover. It may be a very long road for him, but for certain that he's out of danger. That's the first information that we can share with anybody, that yesterday we were not sure about this, but at this moment, he's talking and his ventilator is removed and he's responding to medicines. And at least we hope that he's safe in the hands of the medical persons. Now let's come to what is all this novel all about? Why should these people cry too much about this book? What is written in this book? I hope some of you have at least read this book. At least those people who are from India and speak Malayalam language, probably some of them would have read the critical appreciation of this book, which was published already. And the summary of the story is narrated there. And I mean, it's actually nothing to do with Muhammad or Islam or Allah. Nobody has read this book. Somebody made a demonstration before the first book came. And the government of India at that time wanted to appease the Muslim groups, and they've just got it banned. Imagine, before even the neighboring Islamic Pakistan banning it, India has banned it. But what is in this book? It's an epic novel. I'll tell the brief story of it, then only you would understand what it is. So since officially those people who are from countries where the book is banned, there is no way that you can get the book now. Unless you are in Europe or Britain or in USA, you cannot get the book now. But the book is selling very, very hot even now. I'll tell you the book. It's a fanciful satire novel. That's the primary thing. Rushdie has a very interesting style of writing, which we call magical realism. Magical realism is a special branch of literature where you speak about things with a high quality satire, with imageries and stories which may look similar to reality by its existence at one side. On the other side, it has a different realm of understanding. That's a high quality writing, not meant for common folk to read. So this is using the technique of magical realism in the story. So the story is as follows. So the summary of the story I can tell you. It's a complex and multi-layered plot. It's a story of two Indian Muslims. Listen, this is all what Satanic verses is. Two people who are Indian Muslims living in England. One is Gabriel Farista. He's a successful film actor who has suffered a recent bout of mental illness and who is in love with the English mountain climber Alelu Kone. Saladin Chamcha is a voice actor who has had a falling out with his father. So Jibril and Saladin meet on the flight from Mumbai to London. And the plane is hijacked by Sikh terrorists. It's a highly dramatic story. So two friends meet. They meet in the flight and the Sikh terrorists hijack the plane. During an argument with the terrorists, accidentally detonate a bomb, destroying the aircraft over the English Channel. The book opens with Jibril and Saladin, the sole survivors, falling into the Atlantic Ocean. That's where the story begins. They both are falling from the aircraft because it got detonated. The Sikh terrorists have, by accident, the bomb has gone off, and they are falling down. They are the only survivors, two people. They are falling down to the Atlantic Ocean. Now the story continues as follows. As Jibril descends down, he is transformed into the angel Gabriel and has a series of dreams. The first one is a revisionist history of the founding of the Islam. And it is the details, this subplot, that angered the Muslims. So he has some dreams about the origins of Islam. That is what the Muslims are very angry about. The character based, there is a character named Mahound in this book. So many critics tell that that is Muhammad. Okay. So the character in the novel is Mahound. And he's attempting to found a monotheistic religion in the polytheistic town, Jahiliya. There's a town named Jahiliya, and he's trying to establish a religion. As in an apocryphal legend, Mahound receives a vision allowing the worship of three goddesses. But after realizing that the confirming revelation was sent by the devil, he recants. A quarter century later, one of his disciples ceases to believe in Mahound's religion, but the town of Jahiliya converts prostitutes in a brothel, take the names of Mahound's wife before the brothels were closed. Later, Mahound falls ill and dies, with his final vision being one of the goddesses. Now, Saladin, the other guy, transformed into a devil as he falls, and he later grows horns and goat legs and cloven hoofs. The two men crawl onto the coast, and Saladin is arrested as an illegal immigrant. After being hospitalized, he escapes, only to find that his wife is having an affair with his friends. His misfortunes continue as he loses the job. However, he rages at Gabriel for failing to intervene when he was arrested, eventually transforms Saladin back into the fully human man. In the meantime, Gabriel is reunited with Alleluia, but an angel tells him to leave her and spread the word of God in London. He is hit by the car of an Indian film producer who plans a trio of religious films in which Gabriel will star as an archangel. Later, Gabriel and Saladin meet at a party, and Saladin decides to kill him. However, although he has various opportunities, he does not murder Jibril and instead induces him to believe that Alleluia has several lovers. Jibril eventually realizes that Saladin had tricked him and resolves to kill him. However, when Jibril finds Saladin is burning building, he rescues him. It's a very, satirical story with the London and film producers and car accidents and all these kind of things. Upon learning that his father was dying, Saladin returns to Bombay and reconciles with him. He inherits a substantial sum of money and reconnects with the former girlfriend. Separately, Jibril and Alleluia also travel to Mumbai, and a jealous Jibril murders her and then kills himself. A third storyline is introduced through another dream of Jibril's. It begins in a village of Titlipur, where a young girl named Aisha and her adoptive parents, Mirza Said Akhtar and his wife, Mishal, live. Aisha declares that the angel Jibril has revealed to her that Michelle has breast cancer, but that if the entire village walks to Mecca, Michelle will be healed. The pilgrimage is long and arduous, and many pilgrims die on the way. Others lose faith. When they reach the sea, Aisha says that the seas will part for them. But they do not, and the pilgrims drown. So this is the story basically. And where is Allah? Where is Muhammad? Where is Islamic faith? Where is critique of Islam? Where is blasphemy? And one can find elements in that. But when the book was first banned in India, Salman Rushdie had a very interesting response to that. He said, the book isn't actually, that's quote from him, the book isn't actually about Islam, but about migration, metamorphosis, divided selves, love, death, London, and Bombay. That's what Salman Rushdie said. Thematically complex work earned Rushdie the Whitbread Book Award for the Novel of the Year, and it was shortlisted for the Booker Prize both in 1988. The book was overshadowed, however, by the blasphemy controversy, of course, you know that. And Rushdie was put under police protection after the issuance of the fatwa. And he spent better part of his next decade hiding before the government of Iran declared 1998 that there is no longer a death threat, but they reissue the death threat again. So there is another novel of Salman Rushdie, The Memoir of Joseph Anton, that was published in 2012. That is about he's recounting his experience in hiding. So that was, he's using aliases to tell, who is the person. Joseph Anton is telling his story. So that was his experience. This is what the whole novel is. And this is how the writer Salman Rushdie tried to write things. And what is there for Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini to declare millions of dollars to kill this man who write something very different in his opinion about immigration and the crisis of immigration and of divided selves and love and death and London and Bombay. But who would read it? I'm sure that Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini did not read it. And many people who wanted to ban it and got it banned did not read it. They all have raised their swords, started shooting people and started killing people and started announcing bounties without even reading the book. There are many books that criticize Islam, criticize Quran, criticize the faith of Islam in contemporary world, in several languages. Also, there are books that criticizes Bible, also Bhagavad Gita, also Vedas. So what? It should be like that. People should have the right to speak about books, speak about holy texts, speak about the different faiths, and that should be helping those people who want to remain faithful to critically evaluate their faith. But unfortunately, this book of Salman Rushdie is not even critically evaluating Islam or not even making a criticism of Islam, but speaking about a story of contemporary people traveling on a flight from Mumbai to London, and there is a flight accident, a detonation when the flight was taken by the Sikh terrorists and they are falling and their dreams. So where is the Islamic faith affected? If people cannot understand things, if people cannot tolerate things, how far the world should tolerate these people? Why don't the faithful of Islam tell their religious leaders that they need to transform, move to a new age where the values are different, where freedom of expression is respected, and persons' right to express their opinions and criticize anything or to have their own conscience or to leave religion is simply respected. We are living in a new century. We are not living in the 7th century anymore. And many people who did not get a bus to our century still remain there and try to apply things and implement things according to their faith of those times. Anybody who would kill a murtad, one who leaves the faith, is guaranteed a heaven. That's what is guaranteed in the faith. If you go to heaven, there are several huris, young huris waiting for you. And these young huris are so transparent that you can see even their bones. And they don't have sweat. They don't have hunger. They don't have any other requirements. They would be sexually satisfying anybody who would go into the heaven eternally. And this kind of a faith, and alcohol, any kind of wines are banned for Muslims on earth. But the heaven offers rivers of wine, rivers of cold water and rivers of wine. You can drink abundantly there. So these people who think that if they burst by killing some people or kill somebody who has a different opinion about their religion, they are trying to buy a pass to go to this heaven. And that is the attraction for them. That is the tempting point, which is even promoted by many of the religious leaders in their speeches. If you listen to many of these religious leaders, I mean, you can hear any number of religious preachings on the internet. Many of them offer people the heaven, which is explained in Quran, how beautiful it is for them, only for men, not for women. Or the Taslima Nasreen sometimes she has asked, well, I mean, she cannot understand how the Islamic heaven would not imagine if this is happiness. Well, that's another question, whether this is happiness. Why it's denied to the women? They are only huris. They don't have this opportunity to have 72 men permanently ready for them to have sexuality. And it's also presented that sexuality is the only thing that people are desiring. It's a ill and sick worldview. But a lot of people believe it. They follow it. They try to achieve it by killing heretics. Killing anybody who is supposed to be a heretic, a murtad, a person who left the faith, or who is a critic of their faith. If anybody who draws a picture of Muhammad, because it's believed that Muhammad cannot be drawn or anybody cannot be drawn, because that would amount to idol worship, then you will be transformed into a picture on the wall, which means you will be killed. Nobody is allowed to draw a picture officially. Well, anybody is curious to know, a historic person like Muhammad, how did he look like? I am personally curious because I've been reading a lot about Muhammad and I mean, his adventures. I mean, it's as a student of history, I would be fascinated to see how he would look like. Well, not even a cartoon can be drawn. There were some caricatures, you know that. I mean, in France, there was one series of caricatures that appeared in a publication, in a humorous publication, which had a series of pictures, which had a picture of Moses, of Jesus, and of Muhammad. And Charlie Hebdo, the magazine that published, was attacked. Some of the editors were killed. And again, when the trial was beginning, Charlie Hebdo decided to show their solidarity with the idea of their freedom, or for the life of those people who sacrifice for their freedom of expression. They reproduced all these pictures. And in France, in school textbooks, there are lessons about free expression. And this story and this picture of Muhammad is there on school textbooks. And it is because of that, and somebody has been teaching, that a teacher was assassinated by a student. And again, France responded very well that they would not be succumbing to all these kind of pressures coming from intolerant religious fanatics. They have shown this picture all around the country. On Eiffel Tower, on many of the national buildings, they have shown this picture. They have made a strict warning that intolerance would not be tolerated. France is a civilized, secular society. And so is the case of all those countries who are following the ideals of Universal Declaration of Human Rights. People can believe in anything that they want to believe. They can follow any religion, any absurd beliefs they can follow. Nobody would stop them. But others have the right to reject it and have their own conscience. That's to be respected. When all faiths are respected, not that you want to accept it, the people should be at a mood to understand that when you have a different worldview, your faith will be criticized. And you have a right to criticize any other faith also. People should have tolerance to criticism, and we should be able to live peacefully and with a spirit of coexistence. And that is what is required at this moment. And that is what is highlighted at this moment, because any amount of intolerant acts should not scare us, should not scare anybody. Because if you are scared, if you are afraid, if you stop being open with our opinions, there'll be more and more advances from extremists and radicals and fundamentalists. They cannot hijack our civilization. They cannot stop the human progress. They cannot stop the new ideals that we developed, new value system that we developed with freedom of the individual and free expression of the artist and the fundamental right of anybody to believe in what they think right, whether it's a religion or non-religion or conscience or whatever it is. You have the right, I have the right, we all have the right. And anybody who believes in any religion also, they have their right. And that's to be respected and that's to be accepted. And we shall not cow down. We shall not stop. We'll go forward because freedom cannot get defeated. And human rights cannot be suppressed. Free expression cannot be stopped. Our civilization has to go forward. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Sanal sir. I think now we can move on to the question answers round, and whoever wants to ask a question can raise their hand icon through Clubhouse, and I would just put you in the speakers section. So we have Maria with us. Would you like to continue?
Yes, I would like to make my own observations. 12th August 2022, just 3 days prior to the 75th anniversary of Freedom at Midnight, marked a black day in the literary world as the shocking news of the terrible attack on Mr. Rushdie, 3 decades post-fatwa. His novel, Satanic Verses, is about identity, alienation of people, rootlessness, brutality, compromise, and conformity. To quote from the same novel, "From the beginning, men used God to justify the unjustifiable. Too many demons inside people claiming to believe in God." Unlike other speeches, I would like to read some more quotes from him today. He says, the book is a version of the world. If you do not like it, ignore it or offer your own version in return. It is very, very easy not to be offended by a book. You just have to shut it. Religions, like all other ideas, deserve criticism, satire, and yes, our fearless disrespect. And he goes on to say, what is freedom of expression? Without the freedom to offend, it ceases to exist. And after the attack, the comments to post in social media in Kerala in Malayalam, where some of them were frightening, supporting the attack on the writer. It goes to show the grip of fanatic beliefs even in the so-called modern era. Yet, with a ray of hope in the horizon today, I wish him a more powerful return to life and words. In his own words, you cannot judge an internal injury by the size of the hole. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Maria, for those good words. I don't want to make any comments. I mean, I'm sure that you have read the book, and I mean, since you have been traveling abroad many times, you have read the book, and it's a good observation and a good evaluation of the situation. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I think we can move on to the next person now. We have Ratish KK with us.
Good evening, all. Sir, throughout the world, there's attack from Islamic fundamentalists to the writers, freethinkers, and all those things. Still, people say it's reform, but how do you reform this religion? So, even freethinkers and rationalists, you are talking in many clubhouses and many social media, but actually, it's not going to the might of these people. Again, the attacks, even last week we had Joseph, this thing, and now Rushdie's attack. So how do you reform these religions from our ideology and things?
Well, Ratish, I mean, it's a very serious point that you have raised. Many of the religions that exist now, most of the religions, many religions have faded away. Roman religion has faded away. The Egyptian religion has gone. The Assyrian religion has gone. But the major religions that exist at this moment, especially the three Semitic religions, which is Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, then Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Pastafarianism, all these kind of different religions that we have at this moment. What we see as the most intolerant religion is Islam, because it's a huge religion. I mean, a huge population is following Islamic religion. There are many other intolerant religions also. Some of the cults are very intolerant, like Islam. Mormons, for example. But they're a small group. They're only in the Utah state in the United States. But we can come to such things later. But the fundamental problem with Islam is there has been a reformation in Christianity. But in 1500s, we have already seen that there was a demand of change in the faith of the Catholic Church. The Protestant movement came and challenged the foundations of the Catholic belief. While the Catholic Church remained the same way, they continue their persecution of heretics and all these so-called pagan people. There was a movement that asked for change, and Catholic Church was forced internally to respond to that. In Hinduism, there have been many reformers, starting from the Shankaracharya of the 7th century, 8th century. We see several reformers, even in the contemporary times with Dayananda Saraswati or Swami Vivekananda. There are a lot of people who wanted to change the traditional faith and get it tuned to the modern world. It may not totally transform these societies, but it would give a ray of light, at least some change in the whole structure. Or possibility of tolerance to other shades of the faith. Islam, on the other hand, insists on its fundamental faith and unchallengeable, unchangeable original text. And the whole problem with Islam is anybody who criticizes this religion should be killed. That's part of the faith. Anybody who leaves the faith should be terminated. That's part of the faith. So therefore, nobody can survive by criticizing Islam. Still, you see in modern world, a lot of people who are born in Muslim families are no more practicing Muslims. The Muslims in Europe, majority of them are not practicing anymore any kind of faith. And many people in a lot of Muslim majority countries are not practicing Islam. Many of them still practice because they are afraid of the law. There was recently a survey in Iran. More than 50% of the people in Iran do not want Islam to control their life. And if possible, they would like to leave it. But it's not possible. So the way political authority and militancy and weapons control them, keep them in this faith. Therefore, that has to be challenged. That has to be responded to. Because all Muslims are not opting their religion because they understood the fundamental ideas of intolerance in that. They are born to Muslim families. It's not their choice. They have no opportunity to come out of it. They're afraid to come out of it. So people should have an opportunity to come out of it without fear and consequences. And that should be guaranteed by a civilized society. States and governments should have more courage to protect these people who come out of these religions. If anybody is persecuted for chasing their conscience, chasing their understanding, and if anybody comes behind them with weapons, states should protect them. And that should be guaranteed. That's the only way that Islam's intolerance can be addressed. On the other side, there should be enormous public education to get people in Islamic faith to come out of it. And they have to be encouraged. The ex-Muslim movement, for example, is a great effort in that direction all around United States and in USA and in UK. And in many parts of Europe, you see people from Islamic faith, when they got an opportunity and they got exposed to the modern world, they left the Islamic faith and tried to speak to their communities. So it would take time, but it needs courage. It needs strength to address this thing. And we need tolerant states and powerful states coming in support of those people who want to come out. Like in France, like in the Scandinavian countries, people should have a sense of protection when they want to express their conscience. Thank you, Ritesh.
Yeah, so can I ask one more question?
Please, please, please.
Sir, the Satanic verses, is there a PDF copy available on net?
I don't think, it's a it's a copyrighted book. It's officially published by Penguin. So if you can buy an ebook from the Penguin's websites, I think it's available as an ebook and one can buy it. Unless it is stopped by, the governments. You can easily buy an ebook. Or it's also available on Kindle, it's available. Amazon, it's available. You can just try all these sources.
Amazon India, I don't think it's available.
Maybe. Amazon, that's what I was saying. Amazon India probably may not be providing it because they want to, behave in accordance with the law. But one of the best things that we should do is asking government of India to stop this ban, because it is an absurd ban. There is nothing, that there is no hate speech in the whole book. There is nothing that promotes violence. Only somebody got crazy because of this book, because they did not understand anything. That's the only thing. Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini or any of these Muslim fanatics in Mumbai or in Pakistan who did not even read the book, even if they read, if they don't understand the whole book, they would make trouble. But that doesn't mean that a great literary work should be stopped for people who want to read it.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Ritesh.
Next, we have Kunjama Matthew with us.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity, and I thank Sanal sir addressing this situation. I have only observation. We cannot blame Hadi Matar. He doesn't know any better. He believes if he do this, he will go to heaven or whatever. That's all he knows. The religious priests are not open to their believers, and they are not telling what is wrong, what is right. They are not talking about religious tolerance. This is the problem. This is not on this Sir Salman Rushdie, the attack. The other day, a priest was talking I think around Milwaukee on the stage, 2 or 3 people run to the stage and attack him, and they robbed him about so much, like $1 million worth jewelry. I don't know what all. I think they are also in custody. Same thing happening right now in Kerala, Ernakulam side. I think there's big fighting going on in Catholicism about mostly about the financial land matters and how to say mass facing the people, not facing the people. Nobody is coming forward. Nobody is talking about tolerance. All religions are equal. The fundamental thing is just belief. I don't know. Probably they are afraid. They may lose their positions or religions may disappear. I have no idea. Hope they will come out and say the facts to their believers. And I think Sir Salman Rushdie will survive, and even if I don't know if he loses his eyesight or not in one eye, his cornea can be transplanted. I think he will recover totally and come back alive. And there is nerve damage in one of the arms that one can be repaired. Right now he's on ventilator. I hope and believe he will recover totally. These are my observations. I don't have any questions. Thanks for this.
Thank you. Just for information, he was on ventilator, but yesterday by evening, he is out of ventilator and he's talking already. And he even talked with a little vein of humor about his desire to live long to write more novels. That's a relief practically. Secondly, about intolerance, there is a lot of quarrels in church because wherever there is money, where is corruption, there is a lot of quarrels in between. That's a different thing. Even that is not advisable, but that cannot be compared with violence. The whole problem here is violence. Violence being used to achieve a religious goal. But also we do not know this Mitter, this guy, who has been on the stage. What was his intention? That is not yet officially announced. Was his intention to get the bounty? Or was he just fanatically in religion, thinking that if he kills Salman Rushdie and in the process, even if he gets killed, he would get the heaven where the Huris are waiting for him? One does not know. These kind of things will be known only when the investigation further progress. One thing is very clear, that he was very closely associated with the Iranian faith, and he has been very, very closely connected with many of the religious practitioners of Iran. That is established already. But he has pleaded not guilty. That's a very interesting point. Many of these people, fundamentalists who try to kill somebody or kill, in fact, if they kill also, they would very proudly say that they have done it and they are guilty for it. And they say that, that's something they wanted to do. Here he has pleaded not guilty and trying to defend his position. I don't know what would be his argument, but the intentions are not clearly established at this moment. Anyway, thank you very much for your comment, Mrs. Kunjama.
One more thing I like to share. If this Hadi Matar is very religious person, I don't know why he was possessing fake driver's license ID of New Jersey. If people are religious, they don't do anything wrong. They should be honest, right? This is what I come to know. I don't know this is right or not, but this is also reported.
Well, it is not right, because most of the faiths, including the Christian faith, tells people to do anything possible to achieve the goals of the faith. And you can even lie, you can even loot, you can even kill, you can even attack countries. That is the model shown in most of the Semitic faiths also. That's an ideal that you are a person who thinks that people should be good. That's your intention, your thought. But religions are not like that. None of the religions are preaching. For example, if you go to Old Testament, you don't find a tolerant God there. He's going and chasing people. Even the New Testament, Christianity, Jesus is going, as per the story, going to the temple of the Jews, and where their merchants are there, he was taking a whip and beating people and throwing them out. That's violence. These stories are, many people would take on the basis of their wish how religion should be. But the faith clearly says that the goal is more important. Kill people, kill the enemy is officially asked in Islam. And you do whatever you want to achieve the desire of the gods. That's what all religions are speaking. Anyway, thank you very much. That's your good thought, but that's not how religions are.
Okay, so I guess we can move on to the next person. Next, we have Sandeep Sundaram with us.
Yes, hi. Thank you, Shubhi. Sanal sir, I want to say this in a different angle. I think there is an element of deliberate provocation as well from Salman Rushdie's side. Yeah, I'm not saying that this is the murder attempt is a good thing or anything, but I think when the book was written, there was a deliberate attempt of provocation. Why I say it is because there is a reference of crusades in this, right? So Satanic is mentioned, Mahoud is mentioned. Mahoud is the name of, it is what Europe used to call Muhammad during that time. There is a mention of Aisha, and then there is also mention of Muhammad's other wives, I think 4 of them, as prostitutes, right? So I think these all amount to deliberate provocation. I think, maybe Rushdie was trying to come out of a writer's block at that point of time, or maybe he was trying to get some amount of, I don't know, maybe he was trying to still something, still the thought and see how it works. So if you look at other works of criticism, right, like Umberto Eco has written The Name of Rose. So there, he was talking about monasteries and the bad practice that's happening in monasteries. He wasn't directly attacking a god, or he wasn't directly, naming someone as Jesus or something like that, isn't it? So the way I see it, there was a deliberate provocation, and also Salman Rushdie had apologized for it. Right? So when the fatwa came out, he apologized. His apology was not accepted. That is another thing. There was also a mention of Allah, not Allah, Allah. Yeah, so Allah was the god that Muhammad was very much against. And all of these are mentioned. So, it is very clear what the intention was in the novel. So I would like to know what is your thought about that. And you are clearly saying that there is no mention of Islam in it. There is no mention of Allah in it. So I'm not clear how you arrived at that point, because I see a lot of parallels.
Okay, fine. I mean, first of all, I was quoting what Salman Rushdie has spoke about his novel, what he wanted to say about the novel. It was about people who are traveling in a flight and their dreams and all these kind of things. But coming to the point that some authors have used soft language about faith and religion, and that's a great model, and nobody should actually speak about any person with the name Aisha or Mahound or anything, because that will hurt some sick mind somewhere. If some sick minds are hurt somewhere, well, they should feel, hurt, because people use language to express their opinions. There should be criticism. Any kind of traditional faith or traditional ideas were criticized or challenged. That's how we have progressed. Any faith, for example, is a denial and defying of the earlier faith. The moment you say that Allah is the only God and no other God is a God, that's an absurd criticism of any other faith and rejecting and insulting any other faith. If Moses, Testament say that you shall not worship any God but Jehovah, that's defying other faiths and insulting other faiths and insulting the faith of other people. Every single faith is denouncing and insulting and humiliating other faiths. That's how these faiths are in reality. But on the other side, the idea, well, he intended to criticize to come out of something or get some publicity. Come on, the first book, he got Booker Prize. That was 6 years before the publication of this book, the first novel. That was Midnight's Children, and he got Booker Prize, and he was already in the limelight. And he did not want to come to the limelight by writing a book, by criticizing something. But by the way, if somebody wants to criticize a religion, he has the full right to criticize a religion, make jokes about religion, make humiliation about any kind of faith, make humor about anything. That's the full right of any author. And secondly, all these traditional texts, including Bhagavad Gita or Ramayana or Mahabharata or Bible or Quran, are heritages of humankind. Those were mythologies of the past. And that's our collective wealth, not only of these fanatic people who follow it. And every author has a right to interpret and reinterpret and reproduce in whatever way they want any kind of traditional mythology or any kind of faith. That's how literature has progressed. And many of the novels in India, I mean, even Maheshwara Devi's, very famous novel, which got the Jnanpith Award, that has been an interpretation of the Indian traditional faith. And that, Kazan Saki's Last Temptation of Christ was an interpretation of the Christian faith. And most of these great works that tries to reinterpret the stories coming from mythology is a way of expression of the author. That's how literature grows. And if that hurts somebody and, oh, we are worried, and he had a bad intention, yes, authors have good or bad intention. But they have an intention of expressing certain things, sometimes with humor, sometimes with satire, sometimes with allegory, sometimes with fun, sometimes with joke, sometimes with the hard language. And that's how good literature comes out. That's how provocative literature comes out. That's how literature progresses. If anybody says that if one uses a name of Aisha or Mahound, well, he has to hide in a hole. And those people who want to think in that direction are thinking in the medieval times. Times of change. We live in an age of conscience. We live in an age of free expression. We live in an age of freedom of right, freedom of press, freedom of opinion, free press. That's the value of our times. And if anybody thinks that if you write about a religion, write about, one can directly you can criticize the faith of Islam. Directly you can criticize Muhammad. What's wrong in it? Directly you can criticize the hadiths, the official decrees of Muhammad. Anything that you can criticize, anything you can speak about, anything you can make humor about. Every author, every single author has a right to criticize, to make joke about, to make his own interpretations. That's how literature and art progresses. It's not for the fearful people. They should not, they can only be, of course, there will be consequences. There will be fanatics around. There will be intolerant people who are after your life. But every single author who has taken humanity forward, had to face some kind of consequences. And they are willing to do it. They're courageous enough to face it. And governments and states who have progressed, who understand what is free expression and freedom of press, or artists' right to express their ideas, would try to support them. Only intolerant states and intolerant people would defend this kind of, action of people who would jump for the life of people because they have written something that they thought or they think that it was wrong, against their faith. Maybe it was really against the faith. So what? I have written very strongly against many religions or many faiths. I've written a book on Vedas, and we have published books about Quran, Bhagavad Gita, everything. That's our right. Every single individual has a right to study and make his own observation. And who in the world should stop us? And that is how intellectual growth would progress. And that is what is required now. Critical inquiry, critical evaluation, and strength to evaluate things that many people are afraid about. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks,
Sanal.
Sanal.
So now we have TVS with us.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
So I was just going to speak about the same thing that Sanal just said, that the individual freedom or the freedom of expression or thought should be a paramount virtue that a government or a state should be protecting at any cost. The problem that we see in today's world is, especially in countries like India, where this kind of a book comes out and there's a far outcry from some religious fanatics, and the government kind of gives in and do the appeasement towards these religious fanatics by banning the book or stopping the circulation. And it kind of gives them a validity to the outcry that there are certain ideas that are beyond critic. There are, or there shouldn't be, any idea beyond criticism. Because in a society, if you are afraid to express yourself and express your idea about anything, be it an ideology, be it a belief, be it religion, any of that, if you can't talk about that, you are not going to progress. When you are in a society and if you are not talking about the stuff because of fear or because of fear of offending someone's beliefs or offending someone's feelings, that's not a society that is ever going to progress. In the case of Islam is why it still hangs on to the 6th century or 4th centuries ideals and morals, because it prohibits the same conversation about the Islam itself, which is why it has to resort to violence. Because if it actually have a conversation within itself about the values and the morals it concludes, if they actually had that conversation, Islam will not last. So when you don't have an answer, you have to resort to violence. And that's what Islam teaches. When you look at this person who did this act, he is barely 25. This book was written around 3 decades ago. He wasn't there to read it. He was told, whatever he was told about this book or about the author, that this person should not be alive, or this person should be punished by whatever the deed the Islam thought so, and that to be a virtue, because the drive or the need for this act comes from religion itself. And even today, if we are not discussing these kind of deeds that comes from religion, this will never end. That's all.
Thank you very much. I fully share what you said. If we cannot speak our mind, if we cannot critically evaluate things, we are in an intellectual prison. And making people imprisoned in this kind of magical world of intolerance being accepted everywhere, the societies remain there, forever. There are in many parts of the world, we have people in societies live in the 7th century. They are not going forward. And on the other part of the world, many other parts of the world, or many other sections of the communities, think forward and they go forward. We coexist. The 7th century and 21st century coexist now. Do we want to be with the modern times, our new values of tolerance, or do you want to remain in the 7th century or in the medieval times? That's the only question that we have. If we want to progress, you should be able to understand anything, evaluate anything, criticize anything, and nobody shall be allowed to stop you by violence or by any other means that they think correct. So the states have a responsibility to protect those people who are thinking critically, and there should be a climate available that people are able to speak out their mind without fear of consequences. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think we can move on to the next person. Next, we have Alangat Berlin with us.
Yeah, thank you. I have gone through the Satanic verse. I read this book about 15 years ago. So I have a vague memory of this book. And I know something about Islam also. So I don't believe that after I learned what is, after I have studied something about Islam, I don't believe that this book is an innocent book, that this book does not blasphemize Islam and all. It surely blasphemizes it. The entire religion of Islam. It surely blasphemizes the prophet. There is no doubt about it. There is a story of a story wherein a woman in a brothel is named Aisha. So it blasphemizes Islam. And then there is a story. The title itself is Satanic Verses, and this title derives from a real event which happened in the life of Prophet There is no doubt about it. But then what happened to Salman 2 days ago is actually condemnable. I support the freedom of expression. I will just quote, to begin with, what Salman Rushdie has said on freedom of expression. The first one I have liked about is what he said. He said, I'm just quoting now, what is freedom of expression without the freedom to offend? It ceases to exist. What is freedom of expression? Without the freedom to offend, it ceases to exist. Then the next quote is, if somebody is trying to shut you up, sing louder and if possible better. So I fully support what Mr. Sanal has said. We should have the right to offend. We should have the right to criticize. Now I will just tell you how this title itself is criticizing Islam, because I'll just tell you what the Satanic verse is about. In this book, there is a story, there is a dream sequence wherein a revelation comes to the character in the book who is called not Muhammad, but is called Mahoud or something similar.
Mahoud.
Who actually
Mahoud. Yeah.
Yeah, Mahoud. Who actually he takes into his household three females called Lata, Manata, and Pupusa. And then later on he says that this adoption was not from God, but from Satan. Now I will tell you how this incident, how this character is really blasphemizing Islam and blasphemizing Prophet Muhammad. No, this incident in the life of Prophet Muhammad is really very embarrassing to all Islamic scholars. They try to hide this episode under the carpet. Without revealing, without being bold to tell their followers what really transpired. I'll tell you, what really transpired. If you see the life of Prophet Muhammad, you have to put the life of Prophet Muhammad into the correct perspective. You see, Prophet Muhammad started getting revelation at the age of 40. He died at the age of 63. Now the entire Quran, which consists of more than 6,000 verses, was revealed in this 23-year period, namely from 40 to 63. The first part of his life, which is 13 years, was spent in Mecca, and the second part and the latter part, which is about 10 years, was spent in Medina. Now, when he was first spending his 13 years in Mecca, he was living amongst polytheists who are called Qurayshi mushriks. Mushriks in Arab means polytheists. Now he was going on criticizing the various gods of Qurayshis who was saying your God has no value, or your God several gods. There is only one God. So you all should worship him. Your gods are not God, and so on and so forth. He was going on criticizing them. But look at look at how democratic the Qurayshis were. They tried to reason with him. They tried to have a conversation with him, saying, "Please tell me, how is your God the true God? Please tell me how my gods are not the real gods. And please tell me, please show me some miracles to prove that you are a prophet." There was nothing which Prophet Muhammad could tell these Quraishi politics. Now they tried to have some kind of a meeting with the noblemen of the Quraishi tribe, with the relatives of Prophet Muhammad, and so on and so forth. So when they tried to have this conciliation talk, at one point of time, they told Muhammad, you can do, we can have some kind of a settlement, and that is your God Allah. You can say that the Quraishi gods have the power to intercede. That the power to intercede means that the Quraishi gods, they are also gods, but subsidiary to Allah. And these Quraishi gods like Lata, Manata, and etc. have the power to intercede on behalf of the human being. So Prophet Muhammad at that time he felt, this seems to be a very reasonable proposition. Why should I not accept it? So then he revealed, at that time, a verse from Allah came, which is in Surah 53, verse 19 to 23. What it said, initially were that Allah has three daughters, namely Lata, Manata, and Osa, and they have the power to intercede on behalf of the human beings to Allah. So that was the verse he brought forth. He brought forth first. So the entire Quraishi tribe was very happy. They thought, yeah, fine. So fine. So your God is also there. My our gods are also there. So they prayed together, and everything. Was actually they all prayed together, and then they said, we have no problem with Muhammad. We are also happy. But after 1 or 2 days, many of his companions, Prophet Muhammad at the time had very few followers.
Alangat, shall we come to the topic exactly? Not going too much into the faith of Islam, because that's a little bit out of the topic now. We'll take another meeting, of course, going deep into the Islamic faith and find details of it. Shall we come closer to this, what we are speaking now?
Yeah. I know. What I have to say is that in this 21st century, we have every right to criticize every belief and every religion. You can't say that somebody is dear to me, so you cannot criticize. A criticism is, we have every right to criticize also, and nobody can stop that. If you want me to speak on the topic, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alangat. Alangat is well read about the Islamic faith and the mythology of those times. We should discuss this topic elaborately in another meeting also. That's a very appreciable what you said. What I suggest is, what you said at the last part, every single religion, when they try to establish their faith, they have been blaspheming the faiths of the previous era. Every single emperor, every single kingdom that established or made authority over other faiths have been bringing on their gods and tried to make a hegemony of their gods against the gods of the previous regimes. So gods were symbols of power. They were representatives of power, as we have seen, rightly said by Alangat also, by Muhammad. He wanted to subjugate the gods of the Qurayshis. But the fundamental point is, when Muhammad could make hegemony of his faith over other faiths, or he could blaspheme other faiths, we all have the same right in a modern world to blaspheme any faith that exists, including Muhammad's faith. And we all have the right to criticize any faith or reject any faith or believe in anything that we have, and nobody has a right to stop us. not with violence, not with weapons, not with political authority, not with jails, not with gallows, not with beheading. So this right is to be guaranteed. That's an important part of our civilization. And that's what we are trying to defend. Thank you very much, Alan, and thank you very much for your contribution.
Next, we have Sakti with us. Welcome, Sakti.
Thank you, Shubhi. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sanal Edamaruku. I'm Sanal Edamaruku's daughter. And we've had discussions about religion and the ban culture many times. And I would just like to reiterate here that I condemn the attack. And fanatics from any religion should not have the right to quell the voices of authors and thinkers. It is shameful that such a dastardly act happened, and it should be condemned in strong words. I'm glad this discussion took place and all of you are of the view that there should be freedom of expression and belief. And I think fanatics from any religion, be it Hindus or Muslims or any religion, should be condemned at all platforms. We shouldn't have Hindus getting worried about their goddess being painted nude, or people attacking Salman Rushdie for writing a book which unfortunately has been banned in India. I wish governments across the world stop this ban culture. The more the people read and get to know about various kinds of literature, various kinds of books, and also are able to distinguish between mythology and history, which often gets mixed up. I'm a student of history, and it's very easy for the WhatsApp University to mix up the two. But I'm glad on this platform, there are intelligent people who are well-read and who know the fine difference between mythology and history. Those who think that Ram actually made a bridge between India and Sri Lanka are the same kind of people who believe that Allah had revelations. What is understood by a devout Muslim as revelation can be interpreted by a rational mind as hallucination or, just a vivid imagination. So it's important to know these differences. And once again, condemn the violence. Ban culture should be eradicated completely. People should be allowed to watch plays, read books, so that they're able to open the horizons of the mind. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shakti. I mean, Shakti is my daughter. I mean, she's very active, at least intellectually, in the rationalist movement. And I'm very glad that she came up and expressed her views very clearly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sakti. And now I think we can go on to the next person. We have Ajay Kumar with us.
Yeah, thank you, Shubhi. I echo all that Shakti said. So, okay, I missed the earlier parts of the session. So I don't know if you have already covered this angle. So, okay, well, I came to know more about Salman Rushdie when he was invited. He was an invitee to Jaipur Lit Festival in, I don't remember the year, I think it was under UPA rule, right? He was invited, and later he had, his invitation had to be cancelled, I believe. But the same, I think the same year, Dawkins was also invited, and he was invited. He came to India and he spoke in Literary Festival. This is something that I remember. So that is the time when I came to know more about, Salman Rushdie and his works, right? As the previous speakers have rightly said, right? He blasphemed the entire religion, right? Not just one sect or one prophet or one, entire Islam, right? Not just one sect. But in this case, what I could feel from the beginning was one sect, namely Shias, and one country, namely Iran, right? They were spearheading all these kind of aggressions and all kind of, they were spearheading this course basically, right? So if I understand correctly, I think Salman Rushdie is maybe from a Shia ethnicity from Kashmir, right? So is that the reason? Typically, we see any kind of, if somebody is blaspheming, right? The entire, sect, maybe like we see most of the aggression mostly originating out of, the Arabian countries. And, this is something like a different pattern I could see. Maybe thought was maybe because he was Shiite of Shia ethnicity, right? I mean, it's not right to say he's a Shia, right? He's not a practicing Muslim. So maybe he's of a Shia ethnicity. Maybe that is the reason. Or do we have, is there anything deeper political, or any other reason why Iran is taking up the cause? And why I was asking this question is basically, if historically, right, if you look at the Iran, right, they like globally did not, of course, they were targeting Israel, they were against America, and we know their nuclear scientist, right, Fakhrizadeh was, and what happened to Kashif Soleimani and all that, right? So apart from a standard response from an Islamic country, do we, is there something deeper? Is there something else in this particular case? I mean, I don't know. It's my, my thought process was going in this way, right? There is something more to it, because from the very beginning, right, Iran was, Khomeini was spearheading, and the fatwas were issued by Iran, right? Well, we don't see that kind of, aggression from Iran in other, similar or, maybe you got my question, right? So
yeah, I understand. Yes, I understand. Yeah.
If you have thoughts, maybe if you could share, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah. Primarily, what I wanted to say is that, if you see the genesis of this issue against Salman Rushdie, what one can see is it's not the Iranian government or Ayatollah Khomeini who made the first attack on him. I mean, I'm not very sure whether, Salman Rushdie was a Shia or a Muslim, or whether his background, that I am not very familiar with. But he was not in the faith while he was a student himself. And in public stages, he has been defying his faith, the fundamentals of Islamic faith. For example, publicly drinking wine, for example, to prove that, he does not care about all this faith. That's what he was doing all the time. He was provoking a lot of Muslims deliberately, because he thought to come out of Islam is not enough, but to encourage people, to give strength to people to come out is important. Therefore, he has to show a model. Then his book, his acts as a person, has been provoking the fundamental faith for many people. And also you have to understand the whole mechanics. London is a center of Islamic fundamentalism, mainly because there are a lot of migrants from Iran lives in London, but many of them are ex-Muslims also. But there are a lot of fanatics also are there in London. It's very clear. So perhaps, there is a kind of atmosphere that provoked the whole Iranian regime of Islamic fundamentalism, was the fact that a lot of people who were outside Iran at that time were all criticizing the new government in Iran. All those people who were outside, nobody wanted to go back. They all, made their attack publicly, and they denounced the new regime and publicly attacked them. So there was a political compulsion for Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, mainly because he was originally, when the Iranian Revolution was happening, he was in Paris. He came back and took over the country's authority. And once he is in power, the first thing that they did was, for the transformation of this power, they have taken the support of the Tudeh party, which was the Communist party there. And eventually, once they got in power, they first eliminated all these people. They got them all killed. Then anybody who could be a critic, they all were killed so brutally in the early years of the Iranian Revolution. So there was a lot of bad name coming against Iran. So there was a political compulsion, international political compulsion, to bring the attention away from what they have been doing inside the country against their own people. Perhaps this was a measure to bring the attention and to project Ayatollah and the Iranian government as a protector of faith. Probably that was the inner political compulsion that prompted him to do that. But the objection did not come first from Iran. The book was published in 1988, September, if you see. But the ban of the book was first coming in India the very next month, before the first copy reached in India. Because there was a demonstration in Mumbai streets. Just to appease these fundamentalists, the book was banned. Even Pakistan did not ban the book at that time. Then in January, you can see that in Bradford in UK, there was a demonstration. the copies were burned, and it was going further and further. First, India has banned, then Pakistan has banned. Pakistan is a Sunni majority country, not a Shia majority country. They have banned the book after India. So most of the Muslim countries, no matter whether Shia or Sunni, they all banned, because when once Ayatollah Khomeini publicly denounced a book claiming that it is against Islam, if they also did not ban it, that would amount that they would be with the blasphemer. So people from Islamic faith competed to attack the book. So whether it can be connected to Shia faith or Sunni faith is something I'm not aware of. I'm not exposed to that idea, but if you have more evidence to focus on that, I mean, that would be interesting to understand the mechanics of politics that formulated this kind of a situation. But almost all Muslim countries followed the path of India. That's the most interesting thing. India started it. First, they banned it. The whole issue was actually initiated by India. Once the book was banned, that got the idea that this book is to be banned got currency. That is how it all began. And who is responsible for all this crisis? I would say the political decision to ban this book in India was the triggering of the whole crisis. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So I believe that we're done with all the questions, and thank everybody for joining, and thank everybody for giving their contribution and trying to understand this aspect, and trying to learn a new thing every week. And hopefully we see all of you next week again. Thank you very much. Thank you, Shubhi. Thank you all those people who are in the speakers panel and moderators, and thank you everybody who raised very serious questions. All the questions were of a good level of understanding. I mean, that all represented good level of understanding of the situation, and almost everybody contributed something to furthering the idea. Thank you very much, and here we end.